Hey guys, this is ADWCTA. Welcome to the Whispers of the Old Gods Arena Meta Review. We are going to review all of the classes one by one. Each class gets its own video. And just to kind of set things up, we're going to do it by always setting up the meta. Like reviewing what we know about the OG meta, the Old Gods meta, and what it means for the arena and how it applies to the class. Then we're going to look at the League of Explorer changes. So it's very important that certain cards are going out of the meta. That's pretty much as important. Well, it's not as important, but it's almost as important as what cards are coming in. And it's not like League of Explorers is completely leaving the meta, but the offering rates will go down by 33% of what they currently are. So that's pretty significant. And we'll also talk about nerfs then too. And then we'll review the new cards, and we'll end up with kind of a conclusion about how this class is going to perform in the Old Gods meta. So first, Hunter. I picked Hunter first because it really helps us tease out a lot of what the Old Gods meta is about. So just to review, the Old Gods meta: taunts, defensive, slow, and very tiny slight curve penalty, mostly on the 3-drops, where we have like 2 real 2-drops in the neutrals, 1 real 3-drop. It's not what you would normally get in an expansion to keep the current pace. I think you need like 3 to keep the current pace for each. And when everything goes a bit slower, and when people are less likely to curve out, and when there becomes a lot of taunts, there's an effective penalty that happens on 1-drops, especially 1-drops with only 1 health, because you have 1-drops in order to take the board early on. And that 1-drop is not really a card. It's a very weak card. So eventually, you're basically playing down a card compared to your opponent. So for that 1-drop to work, you having the board has to make up for a card. Taunts that have low attack and high health do the opposite. They get a 2-for-1 card advantage. Like let's say you play a Fen Creeper or a Senjin. They get a 2-for-1 card advantage if your opponent has a lot of small things on the board that has low health. So if you play a 1-drop, I play a 2-drop, your 1-drop hits my 2-drop, your 2-drop hits my 2-drop, you have a small 2-drop, I have a 3-drop, your 2-drop hits my 3-drop, you have a 3-drop. This is all normal trading and you'll always have the initiative. But then I play a taunt, and your next drop no longer gets the advantage. And instead, you're going to lose 2 cards to 1 card after I eat up your smaller card for free that remains on the board. So I don't know if that was very clear how it plays out, but if you didn't get that, just take my word for it. If you're playing a 1-drop on the board, a taunt is just about the worst thing. Like a taunt on curve is just about the worst thing you can see at any point, as long as you just keep curving out, and so does your opponent, but your opponent doesn't have a 1-drop. So having more taunts, and remember, we're getting taunts on 2, taunts on 3, taunts on 4, like we're getting taunts everywhere. So having more taunts is very bad for 1-drops. Having a slow meta in general is also bad for 1-drops, because 1-drops are best when played on turn 1. And if you play a faster game, let's say in 12-13 turns, the game is going to be over, the percent chance that the card matters is going to be available on turn 1 is something like 3 out of 15 or something, right? That's not great odds, but decent odds. 4 out of 4, sorry, because you're mulliganing for it. So like 4 out of 15-ish. On the other hand, if your game is going to go until you draw 20 cards, now 4 out of 20 looks a lot worse. And so both, you drawing it early, that chance lowers effectively based on how the card is going to affect you when the game stretches out. And at the same time, the card, even if you do draw it on turn 1, matters less if your opponent has taunts. So all this stuff just combines to make 1-drops, I think, significantly worse than they were before. So the cards like Clockwork Gnome will probably not be as valuable in the Old Gods meta as they were in any of the prior metas. Because actually they've been like less and less valuable ever since GVG. So to review, 1-drops help you get on the board, and you have to turn that into some card advantage or some face damage. And you really don't get that chance when a taunt comes out. So the taunts, especially the earlier taunts, have a pretty big impact on this. So moving on, the next piece of the Oh Gods meta that's very important for a hunter analysis is just how many taunts are being added to the meta. We have a 7-8 taunt that's going to be valued around where a Piloted Shredder is. And then we have playable, like higher than normal 2-drop values for our 2-mana taunt, for our 3-mana taunt, for our 4-mana taunt is probably a little below the 2-drop range, but then we have a good 5-drop taunt, and that kind of helps the curve go forward in terms of taunts. I think I just counted like 5 taunts, right? And they're all pretty good. Taunts that are around mid 40s to higher than that, right now, that exist in the current meta is Bear, sort of. Evil Heckler, definitely. Fen Creeper, definitely, and Senjin. Those are all the neutral ones that exist. So you're adding something like 5 to 4. And one of the 5 is this insanely powerful taunt, the likes of which we have never seen in the neutral class. Like, the number of taunts you're effectively going to be drafting is going to be more than doubled. Actually, because of how good the Bog Creeper is, it's going to almost triple. So every time you think, does my opponent have a taunt? Can my opponent play a taunt this next turn? The answer is going to be 3 times yes, what you thought it was going to be. Which means I think you're going to have a pretty good chance on every turn that your opponent can have a taunt. I think it'll be really hard to get a read that your opponent doesn't have a taunt. And it'll be not all that likely that your opponent will not have a taunt, or that you can reasonably predict that your opponent will not have a taunt. You always have to play as if your opponent either has a taunt or can very reasonably top deck a taunt in 2 or 3 turns. And needless to say, that's not going to be very good for the hunter, which relies on face damage for a good portion of its damage, especially not face hunter. Maybe mid-range hunter suffers a little less, but like either way, right? Like you're taking away a dimension of how the hunter plays. So now we're going to move on to the nerfs that have happened. And the key nerf that I want to talk about is Hunter's Mark, which got nerfed from 1 mana to 0 mana. And the difference between 1 mana and 0 mana, obviously, it's 1 mana. And in a class that really cares about tempo, like Hunter, that's a pretty big deal. It's still going to be an okay card, but obviously the 1 mana is going to hurt, right? It's going to be an average-ish card rather than, or like a little above average card, rather than I think we have like a great card right now, because it is. So, that is really bad, and that's kind of not happening with any other classes. So Hunter essentially got the equivalent of releasing a regular card over a good one, right? Like if you had replaced a legitimately good / great Hunter's card that's being released in Old Gods, and you replaced it with an average card, that would have the same effect as this Hunter's Mark nerf. So if you think about it that way, Hunter basically got hit, like a legit extra hit this round. And we'll get into the new cards later, and you'll see Hunters don't even have a good card being added. So they're getting even more screwed. And on top of that, the other cards nerfed are also bad for Hunter, right? Like Owl's a beast, so they were a little better for Hunter. That got nerfed. Leper Gnome was 1 a 1-drop, which is better for Hunter, and 2 it has reach, got nerfed. Knife Juggler with Unleash the Hounds, awesome synergy. Knife Juggler got nerfed. Arcane Golem was reach. Now it's still a good tempo card for the most part, but it shines now when you like play it in the later game, which the Hunter tries to not do. So that's a lot of things going against Hunter. Now, the second part of what's changing in the meta, not even getting the new cards, is that the awful LOE cards that the Hunters got are going away. So that's like the one tiny beacon of hope for the Hunter. If you're a Hunter fan, like things just, we've described how things are really not looking good so far in the meta for the Hunter, but the LOE card bonus is at least going away. So you'll get the following cards 33% less. Camel, bad. Dart Trap, even worse. And that can be only good. Like we saw how good Warrior got when their TGT awful cards got phased out, even before their good cards got added, right? Because there was a period in the meta before the Monkey was even released. It was just like Obsidian Destroyer, and the Warrior immediately got so much better just because the TGT cards were phased out. So for LOE, this is going to be something similar for the Hunter, which is nice. Except in the transition between TGT and LOE for Warrior got a ton of good cards, and we'll see now when we talk about the new cards, what cards the Hunters get. So what cards have the Hunters gotten? First, they've gotten some sticky cards. This is kind of a theme that you see Blizzard adding with the Hunter in Old Gods. They have Carrion Grub, which is a 3 mana 2/5, and it's a common card, and it is a beast. 3 mana 2/5 is really good, actually, on turn 3, and it gets worse later on in the game if you draw it. But it is a beast, and it's just begging to be Houndmastered, right? Like, it's a 2/5, it becomes a 4/7 taunt, and you just win the game if you play those two cards on the curve. But that aside, it's an above average card, right? It's nothing to write home about. But it is sticky, and that's important. It sticks on turn 3, so you can have the initiative afterwards. Next, Infested Wolf. It's a rare card, so you won't see it as often as the Carrion Grub, but it is very good. It's a 4 mana 3/3 that summons 2 spiders when it death rattles. So it's a different stat distribution than Imp Gang Boss, but it'll get you 2 spiders, just like Imp Gang Boss usually gets you 2 imps. And it could get you both spiders on the same turn, the turn after that. So it has that little upside. And it's a beast, while Imp Gang Boss is a demon. And you may be thinking, well, this costs 1 mana more, right? It should be much better than this. Well, if you're comparing to Imp Gang Boss and you want to give it the same score as Imp Gang Boss, then yeah, it should be. But Imp Gang Boss is an insanely good card. You can be quite a distance away from Imp Gang Boss and still be a premium card. And this card is indeed a premium card. With the Hunter, especially when you're facing a Hunter, the last thing you want to do is let them keep minions on the board, especially when they're beasts. And super bonus, those 2 spiders are also beasts, I assume. So you get that high main effect, where there's basically no way to take care of it without your opponent leaving a beast on the board. And we'll get into the beast part afterwards. And then finally, there's a Forlorn Stalker, which isn't directly a sticky card, but it incentivizes you to draft more death rattles, and death rattles are sticky generally. So Forlorn Stalker is 3 mana 4/2. It's fine. It's not great. Giving all death rattle minions in your hand +1/+1. You probably won't have any death rattle minions in your hand. You may have one. If you do have one, this becomes a better card. If you don't have one in your hand, it's really not that good. So I'm not terribly excited about this card. And so the Hunters get a couple of sticky cards, which is very good for what the Hunters want to do. And even better for what the Hunter wants to do is they get some extra tempo cards. And here's where I really like what Blizzard's doing with the Hunter in terms of the direction that they're taking the Hunter. Because I think for like 3 expansions now, Hunters have gotten basically, like Brave Archer aside, right? They've gotten basically no fast cards. Every card was slow. Even 1-drops like Web Spinner, it's a draw a card 1-drop. Glyvezuka was the last time Hunters got like a really good tempo card. And in this expansion, they get 2 common class cards that are tempo based. Fiery Bat, 1 mana, 2/1, it's a beast, and it has that death rattle that's the same as the Frog, which is deal 1 damage to a random enemy. That's really good. Now, is a 1 mana 2/1, and even though it's a beast, ever going to be great? Probably not, but this could be an above average card. And an above average 1-drop is definitely welcome if you're a Hunter. So I think this may be deceptively, and this gets the offering bonus too, right? So I think this may be deceptively, like, it doesn't look too intimidating, but it is actually very good for the Hunter. Especially because in the Hunter, even if it damages face, you're not too upset. The second tempo card the Hunters get, and remember, this is 2 out of 3 cards are 1 mana cards for the Hunter class card, and the other one is a 3 mana drop, like on curve drop. So this is all very good tempo for the Hunter. On the Hunt is deal 1 damage, summon a 1/1 Mastiff. I don't know. Well, a Mastiff is not like a beast or anything. It's just it's just a minion. So it's like an Elven Archer, but it's a spell version of an Elven Archer. Doesn't really matter in the arena. You're not going to be doing weird combos with the stuff. So just think of it as an Elven Archer, which is fine. Elven Archer is a great card. So you get some good cards, right? These are all kind of above average cards, but they're not that impactful. And they all take the Hunter in a good direction too. But they're not really doing all that much for the hunter. They're not like super powerful cards. And you'll see when we go to the other classes all got at least one super powerful card, except for one. And the hunter's really missing that, and that's really hurting the hunter, I think, in this meta. So the other rare card that I kind of skipped over is Infest, which is 3 mana, give your minions Death Rattle, add a random beast to your hand. It's unleash the ball of spiders, basically, for 3 mana. If you're controlling the board, it's fine, but it's slow. You're drawing cards. You have to kill your minions. Like, it's not going to be a good card. And back to the beast point. Infested Wolf, lots of beasts. Fiery Bat, 1 mana beast. Carrying Grub, a beast that sticks on the board again. So you have a lot of ways now for the hunter to get beasts on the board. And you'll see a huge contrast when we do Druid, where Druid all of a sudden stopped getting beasts. Well, they had been for a few expansions before. So Hunter's kind of reasserting that beasts are really like more a Hunter thing than a Druid thing, even if they're kind of sharing it now. So that's definitely a development to look out for. And it makes cards like Kill Command a lot more consistent. And it makes card like Houndmaster a lot better as well, right? Carrying Grub is basically not removable if you drop it on curve. Infested Wolf, your opponents do not want to remove that and pop spiders out. And if they do want to pop spiders out, you can then buff the spiders, right? Like, these are going to raise the value of Houndmaster. Okay, now let's get on to the epics. The epic cards for Hunter, they're not going to make that big of a difference in the meta, but they're both good. Giant Sandworm is a 8 mana 8/8 beast. More importantly, it kills your opponent's entire board unless your opponent kills it. And it also deals 8 damage if you go face, kind of for free, because you can kill any minions you want to kill with it, and then your last hit, if you want the 8 face damage, you just hit face with the last hit. So it effectively has taunt, right? We're talking about taunt as a theme of the Old Gods meta. This is a card that effectively has taunt. It's not going to prevent lethal, but it will do everything short of that, because it's way too powerful if you leave it on the board. It is 8 mana, but it's a pretty powerful effect, so it'll be good. The other card, Call of the Wild, is flat out insane. So hunters now have these like 2 huge 8 mana bombs. It's kind of interesting, right? They're both finisher type plays. And Call of the Wild summons all 3 animal companions, which you're thinking, oh, that's 9 mana and 3 cards for only 8 mana? What a good card. No, it's even better than that, because the 3 animal companions actually synergize with each other, right? Huffer now charges out for 5, and your Leok is getting protected by the Misha, which is now a 5/4 taunt instead of a 4/4 taunt. It's a ridiculous card. This is going to be like super, super, super high. I don't know if it cracks 100, but it's a candidate for it. So yeah, so unfortunately those cards they're epic. You're not going to see them a lot. And so what you do get at the end of the day for Hunter is something not terribly exciting. It'll be interesting to play, because you have these cards that are offered a lot, and they're cards that really help you get the board, which for the Hunter was something that they were lacking tools to do. That's why Glyvzuka was so good, right? If you're a Hunter player, you know that's why Haunted Creeper is so good. It's because they help you get the board. And something like King's Elec, even though it's a very powerful card, it doesn't really help you get the board, and so it's not as good. So for the hero power for the Hunter to do anything, you need to at some point be on the board and deal some damage to your opponent's face. You're not going to like hit the hero power button 15 times in the course of the game. So you're going to need the board to deal some damage and kind of finish off with your hero power. And this will be a good way to do it. But you see these cards, and they still kind of push the Hunter more into like mid-rangey, right? They're all like, get the board, get the tempo, trade, get your beast synergies in play. At some point, get the board and get that one good turn before you start hero powering. And that one good turn is probably a turn in which no one is taunting, because taunting is a really bad thing. So on the bright side, the Hunter hero power does get you through the taunt, but on the downside, you need to get through taunts before that and then just finish off with the hero power. So if the meta gets slow enough, the Hunters may be able to find some kind of holes where you cast a removal, you set up a board, you cast removal on your opponent's first taunt that comes out that would have screwed your board over. You get that 8-9 damage in, and then you continue to trade afterwards and get 2 damage in addition to your hero power, so that's like 4 damage each turn, and you wear your opponent down that way. It's possible, but your opponents are just going to taunt more, right? Like later on, you may be able to get that extra 2 damage I was talking about for like another turn or 2 before it gets stopped. So it is definitely going to switch over much more to a mid-range hunter than to a face hunter, which was doing better in actually both the TGT and the LoE meta than mid-range hunter. And mid-range hunter, as we've all seen, is not really that good. And these cards will make it easier to play mid-range hunter, so your consistency using the hunter will be higher, but the power is not there. So hunter is still just going to be, I mean, it's arguably the worst class now. It's going to be the worst class now after this, after the old gods come out. And if it's not the worst class, it'll be the second worst class. And that's only because the other class is also really bad. The other class being priest, in case there was any doubt. So final rank for the hunter of how hunter changes relative to its old position, I give it a 1 out of 10. It is the absolute class most hurt by the Whispers of the Old Gods. And it was never a good class. It was one of the worst classes to begin with. So that's highly unfortunate for class balance. And for players like me who play all classes evenly, this is unfortunate to see. Is it panicking mode yet? I don't want to say it's panicking mode yet. I don't want to say it's arena hunters matter yet. And not just because we haven't played in this meta yet. It's because hunters have gotten screwed basically now 2 expansions in a row, right? LoE was bad. Whispers of the Old Gods is bad. And this isn't even anywhere near as bad as any of the 3 expansions Warrior got was bad. Warriors did not only 3, but they were all worse. So I don't think we're quite there yet, but hey, Blizzard. Next expansion, if Hunter gets screwed again when it comes to just good arena cards, then I don't know. I think it's going to kind of, I mean, we've all seen what happens, right? When a class has a hero power that doesn't affect the board, and then you give it a whole bunch of bad cards. We've seen what happens. Hunter won't be as bad as Warrior because it'll always have an aggro option, but especially with the Whispers of the Old God, like taunt meta and all that, this is really just looking bad. So Blizzard, if you're listening, I'm not panicking yet. This may be the worst class, but within a vaguely acceptable range, I hope. But the next expansion, there's got to be some serious firepower coming for the Hunter, or else we're going to have another class that's way out of sync with the rest of the arena. And I hope that wouldn't happen again in the arena after what happened with the Warrior. So that's it for the Hunter. It is, I think, pretty clear the biggest loser in Whispers of the Old Gods, and we'll end this here. We're going to do Paladin for our next one, just to get things on a lighter note. So this is brought to you, as usual, by our Patreons. Thank you guys so much for feeding the goat. You guys are awesome. See you guys on the next video.